I'd always been more of a gothic horror person, which is, kind of why you get the ambiance around me here. Loved Edgar Allan Poe. My first film dealt with, death and floating corpses and claustrophobia and things, and so I wanted to kind of get those elements into this. This was an era when basically if you had a killer, a knife, a forest, teenagers, you had a pretty good chance of getting a film made. The time came to make another Friday. They felt that there was still, there's still an audience, they still wanted to do another one. They weren't sure exactly what they wanted to do with it, and I was basically given, carte blanche to say, here are the films, pick up from here and see what you want to do with it. And so my discussions with Frank Mancuso Jr. were really in, how do we make sure this delivers for the audience that it's intended for. And from my standpoint, I said, well, I do want to have, a sense of style and humor with it. And he said, fine, just don't make fun of Jason, you can have the humor in all the other areas. So I had a lot of freedom in that regard.
This is great!
CJ was great. I'm going to let out a little secret that I don't think people know, but maybe they do. If you're a really hardcore fan, you may know this. When we started our Friday the 13th, CJ was not Jason. The stunt coordinator, Dan Bradley, was Jason. And the first day or two, I think it was the first 2 days when we were in daylight, all the stuff where they're doing the paintball stuff, if you look carefully, you'll see it's not, CJ's body type at all. It's, Dan was physically, quite a bit different in terms of, his size and the way he moved and everything else. And I got a note from the studio after they saw the first day of dailies, and they said, we want a different type for Jason.
I was running a nightclub in Los Angeles, and the special effects people from Part 4 were doing a special effects for Hypnotist we had at the club I was running. And they decided to do a scary scene where the subjects were under, and here comes Jason breaking through the screen. Well, I am somewhat large, or abnormal, so they selected me to do that. And for some reason, the demeanor that I displayed on the stage at my nightclub impressed the special effects people. And they joked a lot and said, hey, we're going to cast you for Friday the 13th next time. And I was like, sure, whatever. Part 6 came around the corner, and lo and behold, I got a phone call to go meet with Frank Mancuso Jr., which I did. And the first time the meeting went well, of course, and the stunt coordinator, Michael Nomad, wanted an individual who could do stunts, as did Frank Mancuso. Since not being a stunt man, but spending 4 years in the military prior to that, and having good physical structure, everybody was comfortable with, my ability to do it. But I didn't get cast, for the record. I did go out to another stunt man, and within 3 or 4 days of the first dailies coming in, things changed. I got a call back, went back and met again at Paramount Studios, and within approximately 24 hours got a phone call asking if I could leave for Covington, Georgia on Monday. So, and the rest is kind of history.
The second I met CJ, I thought he was just perfect. I mean, and he just had, this almost Terminator, machine-like quality, being this Marine.
Though you're the principal, that wasn't my mentality. I was there to do a job. I was being paid very well to do a job. So I was always kind of like the mentor to everybody. In fact, when we were in California, I had a big mobile home, and it was huge. I mean, I was like looking up and down this mobile home, and what I was doing is I was giving all of the transportation guys and girls, they could sleep in the mobile home. They're working 12, 14-hour shifts. I'm on set. Go over there and sleep.
CJ never complained. I mean, and that's a grueling job playing Jason, and especially at the long hours, and it was freezing cold there, and going into that lake, and doing the fights and doing everything. He did all his own, stunts and everything, and just, he never ever once said, anything other than, you know, thank you or yes, sir.
As far as the actual underwater scenes, a little claustrophobic. You got to realize I was truly chained 20 feet under the water. There was no way for me to get away if the safety divers did not come in when I signaled for air. So you had to have full ability as far as the safety divers knowing that they'd take care of you. And Michael Nomad and his team, I was fully confident. And when I would signal for air, I'd pop my mask up, and in would come a safety diver, since I couldn't see, and physically put the regulator in my mouth. I'd clear it, take a few deep breaths, give the signal thumbs up, and we go back to acting.
The interesting thing about the underwater stuff is that that was actually 3 different locations, because in Georgia, you know, we had this big dark lake at night that we had the light, and of course, you know, the actors got out there and did all that. It's freezing and horrible and filled with water moccasins and God knows what all in that water. And then we went to USC to their pool and shot, you know, the beginning of the fighting and all the stuff where we could actually needed to get the camera in closer because we couldn't obviously in the middle of the lake. And then the sun came. You know, I had one night to do it, and the sun came up, and you know that we couldn't shoot anymore. So I called up my parents, who lived in Culver City at that time, because they had a little pool, and I said, "Would you guys mind if I came and shot, you know, the last part of the movie in the pool?" It's like, "Sure, yeah." Having no idea that I was going to be grinding up Jason's head, you know, with this motor, and turn the whole pool, you know, blood red with gooky stuff, and you know, my mother was freaking, but my dad, you know, thought it was the greatest thing ever. We did the movie in Covington, Georgia, and you know, I don't think they had any clue that we were actually a Friday the 13th, because the actual name that the film was at that time was Aladdin Sane. If you remember, for the old timers, the David Bowie album Aladdin Sane, and we were also playing off of the words Aladdin Sane when we made it. So if you see any of the outtakes at some point, which hopefully they emerge, you know, that's what's on the slate.
Why'd I have to go and dig up Jason? Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
I began to think it would be great fun to set up scenes and situations to allow the audience to literally provide the punchline. So there's a few different things in My Friday that have that, and probably the one that was the most noticeable was my wife Nancy plays Lisbeth, the camp counselor who was killed in the beginning with Tony Goldwyn, and she offers, in an attempt to try to buy Jason from killing her, offers him money and a credit card, and when she gets killed, she goes down into this puddle, and her hand drops, the money sinks, but the American Express card, you know, kept floating, and I held on that shot intentionally, so that somebody in the audience, and it always happened, would yell out, "Don't leave home without it." And then the rest of the audience would crack up, figuring, you know, how clever somebody in the audience was, not realizing that was, you know, purposely done for that. Yeah, if you watch the film, I tried to put a lot of little in-jokes, little nods to different things that were either influences or friends or whatever. For instance, since Jason was brought back with a lightning bolt, you know, obviously that's Frankenstein, and if you look at the grocery store in the background, it's Karloff's Grocers. When they say, you know, where's Tommy driving, you know, Cunningham Road.
Come on, Dad. You can at least have her drive out to Cunningham Road and look for him.
Megan.
We just got a call from Carpenter, being another town.
The best I can do is call the station in Carpenter and have them keep a lookout for them.
One of the kids falls asleep reading No Exit, which I felt was another way of putting a little bit of dark humor. I tried to give the kids, too, a sense of humor, even the young kids, like, you know, what were you going to be when you grew up?
So, what were you going to be when you grew up?
One of the best scenes I think I'm most proud of is there was a scene where I break through the wall, and I grab her head and I start to squeeze it. And I had to go through the wall. The point is, if I remember correctly, it was a $20,000, $25,000 shot to set it up. The complication of the scene was getting through the wall, number one, and making sure you're completely through it as your foot comes down to make a step. So myself and Michael practiced that a few times, just getting the footing down, so that when I blew this wall out with my right knee, and I had to blow it out completely, then my arms would forcibly go through. But at the same time, you're going from blackout to light, and you have to step down without missing your step. I think I was most proud of that because we did it on one take.
Another one of the thrilling and somewhat scary experiences of this film is when we finished the film, we had an invited audience come to Paramount Studios to see it in the screening room there. And, you know, I came to the studio about, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours early just to make sure things were set up, and the kids were already lined up. They were so into this movie. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, just to hear, I couldn't tell if the movie was working or not working because they were just constantly talking, yelling, screaming, applauding, laughing. But there was times you just couldn't tell. Were they just having a party? When the movie was all done, I came up to Frank Mancuso Jr. and I said, I guess it worked. What do you think? He goes, oh yeah, no, it worked great, but we need 3 more kills. I said, what do you mean 3 more kills? We're all out of money. No, your producer saved a ton of money. We're fine. We can go and shoot 2 more days. So I'm thinking, oh my God, who am I going to kill? He says, I don't know, you'll figure it out. So, you know, the caretaker had not died. So, you know, that kill was added, and the couple out in the woods that see the caretaker getting killed, that was added.
We gotta get to the sheriff's office.
And Sissy, who was just pulled through the window, and then later you saw her decapitated head. Now we actually showed, you know, Jason do it. So there was just, you know, things to kind of beef up either what we already had or, you know, add these other elements. And I was a little bit upset only because, you know, I had made it 13 kills, and I was very proud of that fact. I was kind of staying with these little rules that I came up for the film. But ultimately, they were such kind of interesting sequences, and I just thought that was one of the images for me that was always very nightmarish was the thing of seeing Jason after he had just killed the caretaker, turning and looking at the guy that sees him and then starts after you. And that's, to me, is one of the, you know, the great nightmare images, you know, that we have, is somebody, you know, where you're watching something that you shouldn't be watching, and suddenly they see, you know, that you're watching them and come after you. And it's very small and basic, but that, you know, we didn't have something quite like that in the film, so that was, to me, a very nice addition.